My name is Olivia Hayes, and tonight, as I sip my coffee from the 30th floor of my glass-walled office, I can see the street below my street. The same cracked sidewalks and broken lampposts people used to laugh at when I was a kid. The same corner store where I once stood outside counting coins, embarrassed that I couldn't afford a soda. Now, every building on that block belongs to me. Funny, isn't it? The world has a way of circling back. I lean against the cool steel frame of the window, feeling the silk sleeve of my blouse slide against my skin. My heels are still on even though it's past 9, habit, I guess. The office is quiet except for the low hum of the city below and the faint buzz of my phone on the desk. When I pick it up, I see the name flash across the screen. Tessa Miller. I almost laugh. Of course. Tessa, the girl who made it her mission in high school to remind me how pathetic my street was. The one who said people like me would never escape the smell of rusted gutters and broken fences. Her message is short, but sharp enough to twist the past open again. Olivia, heard you're doing well. Any chance we could meet? I might need your help. My chest tightens. For a second, I'm back at 16, hearing her voice echoing down the hallway, laughter ringing in my ears. But then I glance outside again, at the glowing streetlights shining on the pavement I now own. And this time I smile. I wasn't always Olivia Hayes, real estate mogul. Back then, I was just Liv, the girl from Ashwood Street. Ashwood Street was the kind of place people drove through fast with their windows rolled up. Cracked sidewalks, peeling paint on houses, a constant smell of oil from the mechanic's lot at the corner. It was home, but it was also the punchline of too many jokes. I remember one afternoon in sophomore year, standing by my locker when Tessa Miller and her friends cornered me. She twirled a strand of her perfect blonde hair, smirking. So, Liv, how's life back in your little ghetto street? Do the rats bring you breakfast? Or is it the cockroaches? Her friends erupted in laughter. I tried to focus on the books in my hands, but my fingers trembled so badly one slipped and thudded onto the floor. My cheeks burned as I bent to pick it up, praying they'd just walk away. But they didn't. Maybe one day you'll move somewhere nice, Tessa continued, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. Oh, wait, people like you never leave streets like that. That was the moment. The one that carved itself into me like a scar. I held back my tears until I got home, pushing past the peeling front gate and into our little house. My grandmother, Margaret Hayes, was in the kitchen, stirring soup like she always did after her shift at the diner. She took one look at me, my red eyes, my shaking hands, and without a word, she reached for the chain around her neck. She slipped off her locket and pressed it into my palm. Inside was a tiny picture of her standing in front of a small farmhouse she'd grown up in, nothing fancy, but filled with pride. Olivia, she said softly, her voice steady, people will always try to measure you by where you came from. Don't let them. Streets change. Lives change. But only if you walk them differently than they did. That night, lying in bed, I held that locket so tightly it left a mark on my skin. The words replayed over and over in my mind. I made myself a promise. One day, I wouldn't just leave Ashwood Street. I would own it. Not for revenge. Not even for pride. But to prove that the girl they mocked was stronger than the laughter that haunted her. After that night, everything shifted for me. I wasn't the girl who sat quietly at the back of class anymore, waiting for life to be kind. I was the girl who worked, who fought, who carried a locket in her pocket and a fire in her chest. By 17, I was bussing tables at Harper's Diner after school, wiping down sticky booths until midnight. The smell of fried bacon clung to my clothes, but the tips went into a shoebox under my bed. By 18, I added a second job, stocking shelves at Green Mart. My friends spent their weekends at football games and parties. I spent mine counting dollar bills until my hands cramped. People whispered, "Why's Olivia working so much? She'll burn out." But I didn't care. Every coin felt like a brick in the foundation of something bigger. College seemed impossible at first, no money, no connections. But fate sent me a lifeline in the form of Professor Daniel Brooks, my economics teacher. He saw how hard I worked, how I stayed after class to ask questions when everyone else had left. One afternoon, he pulled me aside. "You've got a sharp mind, Olivia," he said. "Don't waste it on surviving. Use it to build something." He helped me apply for scholarships, wrote recommendation letters, even slipped me used textbooks from his office, so I wouldn't have to buy new ones. Thanks to him, and thanks to those endless shifts at the diner, I made it into a small business program at Columbia State University. That's where I discovered real estate. I still remember my first internship with Morgan and Blake Properties. I wasn't glamorous, just a girl in thrift store heels and a borrowed blazer, but I listened. I studied. I learned how numbers turned into neighborhoods, how broken buildings became gold mines. And then came my first taste of success. A tiny, rundown duplex 3 miles from Ashwood Street. Everyone said it was a bad buy, that I was throwing away the little savings I had. But I poured everything into it, scraped walls, painted cabinets, fixed plumbing with my own hands until they blistered. When I finally rented it out, the profit wasn't huge, but it was mine. I cried in that empty living room the day the first tenant signed the lease. Not because of the money. Because I'd done it, me, Olivia Hayes, the girl they mocked. That duplex turned into 2 houses. 2 turned into 6. 6 became a small block. And slowly, quietly, I began circling back toward the street I swore I'd reclaim. Ashwood Street. I never told anyone, not Tessa, not old classmates, not even most of my family. Online, I kept things modest, a coffee photo here, a casual work update there. No bragging. No details. Because this wasn't just about success. It was about patience. About buying every cracked house, every broken lot, one deed at a time. And one day, I looked down at the papers spread across my desk and realized the girl from Ashwood Street now owned half of it. The invitation came in the most ironic way possible, through Tessa Miller herself. She was organizing a small investment mixer downtown. Real estate investors, local business owners, city council representatives. She must not have realized whose name she was typing when my email pinged with, "Olivia, would love for you to join us. We're focusing on redevelopment opportunities near Ashwood Street." I almost laughed out loud. Redevelopment opportunities? She had no idea. That Friday evening, I arrived at the venue, a refurbished loft with exposed brick and glimmering chandeliers. My heels clicked against the polished wood floors as I walked in, the hum of conversations filling the air. Everyone was dressed to impress, swirling wine glasses and flashing business cards. And then I saw her, Tessa, still perfectly put together, still commanding the room with that easy confidence. When her eyes landed on me, her smile faltered for just a second before she smoothed it over. "Olivia," she exclaimed, arms opening like we were old friends. "You look wow. Different. Different. That word again." I just smiled politely. She introduced me around the circle. "This is Olivia Hayes, an old friend from school." Friend. I bit back a smirk. As the night went on, conversations inevitably turned toward Ashwood Street. Investors discussed the area like it was a chessboard, debating what could be torn down, what could be flipped, how to make a profit from the land no one wanted 20 years ago. Finally, Tessa leaned toward me, her voice syrupy sweet. "You grew up there, didn't you? I bet you know exactly which properties are worth chasing." I set down my glass, the weight of the moment pressing in. The loft seemed to quiet around me as if the city itself was holding its breath. "Yes," I said slowly, meeting her eyes. "I know Ashwood Street better than anyone here." "Then tell us." One of the investors prodded. "What's the inside scoop? Which block should we start with?" I let the silence stretch, watching the anticipation build. Then, calmly, deliberately, I slid a stack of papers from my leather bag onto the table. "Deeds. Contracts. Titles. You're welcome to start anywhere you like," I said. "But you'll have to talk to me first." The group exchanged puzzled looks. I leaned back in my chair, my voice steady, unshaken. "Because Ashwood Street is mine. Every building. Every lot. Every corner you're talking about, it belongs to me." The shock was instant. Eyes widened. Mouths dropped. Someone actually choked on their drink. Tessa laughed nervously, shaking her head. That's impossible." I held her gaze. Is it? Go check county records tomorrow. You'll see my name on every single deed. Silence hung heavy. The woman they once mocked for living there now owned the very ground they wanted to profit from. One man finally muttered, "Unbelievable," another whispered. She wasn't kidding. But it was Tessa's face that I'll never forget, her flawless confidence cracking, her eyes darting from me to the papers like they might disappear if she stared long enough. "Olivia," she stammered, How did you?" I smiled, not cruel, just calm. "While you were laughing at me, I was working. While you were mocking my street, I was buying it. Piece by piece. Brick by brick." I stood then, gathering the papers slowly, letting the truth settle into every corner of that glittering loft. "They mocked my street," I said softly, almost to myself. "Now I own it entirely." And for once, no one had anything to say back. The days after the mixer were a blur. Word spread fast. Investors who had once dismissed me were suddenly flooding my inbox. Former classmates, even old neighbors who once crossed the street to avoid me, were now reaching out like we'd been close all along. And then came Tessa. She showed up at my office unannounced. My office on Ashwood Street, a sleek glass front building I'd renovated from an old hardware store. She stood in the lobby, eyes darting around the polished floors, the modern art on the walls, the hum of assistants moving efficiently. She looked small. "Olivia," she said, her voice thinner than I'd ever heard it. I was wondering if there's a place for me in what you're building. Maybe community relations? I've got experience, contacts." I let her words hang in the air before motioning her to sit. I folded my hands on the desk. "Tessa," I said evenly, "you mocked me for years. You mocked the very street you now want to profit from. And now you want me to hand you a role?" Her cheeks flushed. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "I'm not cruel," I continued. "But if you want a seat at this table, you'll earn it. No shortcuts. You'll start in the community program, organizing events, listening to residents, serving the very people you used to look down on. If you can prove you've changed, maybe then we'll talk about more." She blinked, clearly stunned. "You'd make me start at the bottom?" "Yes," I said firmly. "Because power without humility is poison. And I won't let poison into what I'm building." It wasn't just her. When old neighbors approached me, people who once sneered at our peeling paint or whispered behind my grandmother's back, I laid out conditions for them too. "If you want to be part of this revival, you'll have to contribute. Mentor a teen. Clean up a block. Invest your time, not just your money." Some scoffed. Some walked away. But a surprising number stayed, nodding slowly, shame softening into something like resolve. Even family came knocking. Cousins who once teased me about being the poor Ashwood girl asked for help starting businesses. I agreed, but with rules. "I'll match your funding," I told them, "but only if you stick to your business plan, attend financial literacy workshops, and hire at least one young person from this neighborhood. No excuses." It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. A rewriting of rules. I wasn't just buying buildings, I was reshaping the culture of the very place that once crushed me. At night, I'd walk Ashwood Street under the new streetlights we'd installed, hearing the sound of children laughing where once there had only been broken glass. And I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Not because I'd won, but because I was finally strong enough to set the terms. The first time I truly felt it, the full weight of what I had built, wasn't at a board meeting or a ribbon-cutting ceremony. It was a quiet Sunday morning. I was walking Ashwood Street alone. The air smelled of fresh coffee drifting from the cafe I'd opened on the corner. Children's laughter spilled from a new playground where an abandoned lot used to rot. For the first time in decades, the street felt alive. A little girl came running past me, her braids bouncing as she chased a ball. She looked up at me, smiling without hesitation, without shame. In her eyes, Ashwood wasn't a place to be mocked. It was simply home. I reached for the chain around my neck, pulling out my grandmother's old locket. The gold was worn now, edges dulled by time, but inside the photo hadn't faded. Margaret Hayes, standing tall in front of her childhood farmhouse. The same woman who told me, Streets change when the people walking them do. Tears welled in my eyes as I whispered, "You were right, Grandma." I thought of everyone who had doubted me. Tessa, now humbly working in the community program. Former neighbors, now volunteering to plant gardens and paint murals. Even my own cousins, who were learning discipline through the businesses they once thought would come easy. People were changing, not just because I owned the deeds, but because I had forced them to confront their own arrogance, their own cruelty. And I had given them a chance to rebuild alongside me. I paused in front of one of the newly renovated buildings, running my fingers along the smooth brickwork. Once, this had been a hollow, graffiti-covered husk. Now it was a vibrant bookstore, its windows glowing with warm light. I closed my eyes for a moment, breathing it in. The sound of voices, the rhythm of footsteps, the life pulsing through what used to be lifeless. The girl who once walked the street in shame no longer existed. In her place stood a woman who had rewritten the story, not just for herself, but for everyone who came after her. As I turned to head back toward my office, the locket pressed against my chest. I smiled to myself. "They mocked my street once," I whispered. "But today, when I walk it as its owner and its protector." And with that, I stepped forward, heels striking confidently against the pavement that now carried my name.